Fadel Fiani, Happy New Year. Good to have
Happy
you.
New Year, Martin. Good to be here. Thank you.
I feel like we need some snowflakes in the background phone. Well, look, thank you very much for making the time this early on in the year. Look, for the benefit of the audience, I would love if you would mind just giving a bit of an introduction yourself, where you've worked, that kind of thing.
Thank you, Martin. My name is Fadel Fiani. I'm a value engineer currently at MRI Software. We're leading company in building solutions to manage real estate, different verticals of real estate, commercial, residential, and affordable housing. I started my career in consulting with Oracle a long time ago, way back when Oracle was a database company, and then transitioned into pre-sales with IBM. During my pre-sales career, I realized that a lot of deals kind of get stalled on value, right? We get to the end, we go through the demos and POCs and all of that, and then they get stalled on, well, we don't know what the value is, right? So somebody has to handle this conversation, and we
Yes.
typically didn't have anyone to handle this conversation. So that gave me the incentive to do value engineering, and I started on that path at Oracle back in 2011 with business intelligence, and I had great support from a great leadership team. And I continued on that path from Oracle to SAP to Iron Mountain and now MRI Software. What was intriguing about that transition is that I'm coming from a technical background and having the business acumen. I was able to build the business IT alignment where you're marrying business capabilities with or business requirements rather with IT capabilities. That's the most exciting thing about my role, really.
Brilliant. Well, look, right off the bat, you mentioned the key word, which is stall. We talk a lot about indecision and the challenges today with something like 60% of deals die due to indecision or stall. And you're right, value story is the key to answer the why this, why us, why now. I'd
Mhm.
love for you to just double click on that. What is that pain that you see time and time again? How does value engineering really help to address it?
So there are a couple of aspects to this, right? One is we can do everything right. We can go through the value engineering and what have you. But the one thing we need to marry is the right problem with the right person, right? So we could be addressing a real challenge, but is that real challenge relevant to the
For
person we're
that
talking?
person?
It may not be. The other thing that we don't pay attention to is the company or some other place in the company actually addressing this issue and we don't know about it, right? So is this problem being taken care of? Is it relevant to the company altogether? So I'll give you a quick example that I use when I'm trying to deliver some value enablement, right? The main point that we need to address is differentiating between technical issues and business issues. So a technical issue could be, stitching data in Excel sheets. But is that relevant to the person receiving the report at the end, right? They're getting the information, they get it on Monday morning, they get the accurate information. So how much time does it take IT to get this information is not relevant to the person signing the check. So at the end of the day, we need to be talking to the right person and getting the problems they're struggling with.
But is that how you minimize the stalling in a deal?
That is one way you can minimize the stalling is to get the right, talk to the right person, address their challenges. And there are two issues also that we need to address. There are challenges, right? And understanding the impact of these challenges. Typically what I get is they're doing everything manual, right? And my question to the account executives at that point in time, how does that impact the business?
Got it. And look,
And
in sales, good, sorry.
no, sorry. I was going to say, and I typically don't get an answer to that. So we need to drill down into the impact. It causes customer attrition, lack of retention, increasing customer acquisition cost, whatever the case may be, right? But there is an impact that we don't typically drill into.
For sure. And look, in sales, we talk a lot about multi-threading, right? Multiple stakeholders, multiple threads. I mean, it sounds very similar because ultimately this is a sale, right? You're trying to identify what's important to which person and how severe is that pain, right?
Yes. And one thing I probably neglected to mention is that, if we're applying MEDDIC, we typically have self-centered view of the sales process. We look at how we sell. We understand how we sell. We have whether it's value selling, solution selling, however you want to call it. We have the 5 stages of Salesforce, but we never really drill into the issue of how do customers evaluate technology? What is their process, right? We can go in the first meeting and offer demos and POCs, but how do they evaluate it? Do they need a POC? Do they need a business case? And if they do need a business case, then what kind of a business case, right?
Do you ask them up front, how are you evaluating this?
Yeah, I do. I do, because sometimes they have the budget and sometimes they don't have the budget. So that gives you an idea. Am I talking to someone with a budget, or do they need a business case to request the budget? And so when we deliver the business case, then we have an idea of what we're looking at and how we can enable the customer to deliver that presentation to their leadership to get that budget approved.
Give me an example, obviously not a real, more of a hypothetical example, of a scenario where you were speaking to somebody that doesn't have budget for the solution. Is it because it's driven by an outbound outreach by a sales rep who's piqued the interest of this individual, and so it's kind of like an upward battle to convince them of the pain so that they can then go and get the budget?
I can give you a couple of examples. One was a Q4 opportunity where
Love Q4.
I was love Q4, right? You're back against the wall Q4 opportunity where we were talking to two different teams, operations and finance, right? Finance has the final decision to sign the deal. Operation wants it to happen. Finance has the authority to sign the check, but we're talking to operations, not finance. We delivered the demos, we delivered everything, but now, the deal comes to finance needs to see the value. They need to see, they told us to go build a business case, and suddenly the account executive said, "Oh, we have someone here who can help you do that." So that's when I got in, and operations, since they wanted it to happen, they wanted to get technology moving. We dove into areas of revenue generation, cost savings, productivity improvement, opportunities for scale and growth.
All the way at the tail end of the process.
All the way at the tail end of the process, and that's what they told us, which I really don't like to do, because
no, of course not.
I don't, because at that point in time you cornered yourself into the solution, right?
Exactly.
You basically told them, okay, here's the solution. What's the problem? Yeah. And that's what I was doing. But at that point in time, we got into areas of, it wasn't what the solution can do. It was more increased productivity, but what will you do with this productivity, right? They said, we can use the time to increase revenue in this and that way. That was the main compelling value proposition that they delivered to finance.
Does it raise red flags when this happens usually, where there's been a sales cycle and at the very end, the champion calls you and says, "I need a business case tomorrow"?
That normally gets my heart rate up, yes.
Yeah.
It does, because I'm in the unknown. I don't know the customer. I haven't worked with the customer. My first call with the customer is an introduction and what feels like a third-degree interrogation. Trying to be friendlier, but I have to ask about numbers, and I don't have that credibility yet, or that rapport yet with the customer.
Would you say it's a fault of the sales rep, the account exec, that hasn't done their job of building a business case throughout the course of, or at least or involving you earlier on in the deal to build the business case as part of the MEDDIC process?
Fault is probably a little strong. I would say either lack of knowledge of the value process, or they're under a lot of stress to close the deal now, and they feel there is a misconception that introducing a value engineer into the process is going to slow it down. Is going to slow it down. It really doesn't. But if it does, I often found that it may do it in the beginning, but what it does is 100%. It will help you tactically sell something, even a small piece of the pie right now. But then if you're building a strategic roadmap, looking at the strategic vision of the customer, then you're coming back in a year or two and saying, last year we discussed this. Should we sell that? Should we align with your strategic vision right now?
And even if there's a sense that it slows things down earlier on, it'll speed things up further down the sales cycle, because everything will be clear, right? That business case
Exactly. So the way when I deliver enablement on Medic, I try to simplify it because some of the more junior account executives get boggled up into metrics, decision process, decision criteria, economic buyer, coach, champion, all of these little letters. And I try to simplify it. Look, let's not overthink it, right?
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
M and I.
Well, here's the thing. What is it that we're trying to do? These are your metrics. How we're trying to do it, and these are probably your decision criteria. Why? That's your business case. How? That's your demo. So
Yeah.
between demo and a business case, we're talking about what to do or why to do it versus how to do it. Which one do you want to do first? Right? I can tell you how to do it, but there's no reason for you to know because there is no reason for you to do it. So showing you why to do it gives you the appetite to learn how. But showing you how, and this is why you see a lot of people sitting in meetings or demos and like, I have no idea why this is relevant to me. So that's why, don't overthink it. And it helps you qualify things. The other idea, I do have one of my Bibles in value management is Crossing the Chasm. I don't know if you've read that.
Of course,
yeah,
very
right.
well.
So, identifying the early majorities versus or early adopters versus early majorities. And if you have an early adopter, their business case is very different than the other ones, right? So what kind of a business case? I talked to a CFO recently and he told me, look, all I need to understand, I need to talk to different people in the business and show me what areas of the business can be improved. And I will assign numbers. I don't need you to do an ROI and all that. I can get that. So understanding what type of a business case, helps a lot in moving things forward.
Would you say the main output of your role within each deal is the business case? That's what it's all leading to?
It is, although currently I'm working on something that's probably, as I mentioned, more like a requirements document, identifying areas of improvement in the business, and it has no numbers other than, I could probably put in numbers of 30% improvement in revenue here and there, or
assumed impact.
Assuming just the high level impact, but just outlining the different areas or different areas of the business that could be improved and how we can do it and what opportunities would open up for the company if they implemented our solution.
When you build a business case, how early on in the process do you involve your prospect?
If it's up to me, very early on, like the first or second call, and I do ask, as we mentioned, how do you evaluate technology, right? And
I love that you said that.
How do you evaluate technology? It's simple. What's the next step going from here? Rather than, typically we reconvene internally and try to decide on 2 or 3 things to entice the customer. But it's up to them. It's their evaluation process, and it's important. I feel that we do align our sales process with their evaluation process. Because we could be a stage 3, they could be in the requirement definition phase, right? If this is where they are and we can work with them to define the requirements, we're winners.
Absolutely.
We're more of consultants. We start as consultants, we end as sales.
I love that. What I find truly unique, obviously I'm in the business, right? But what I find truly unique about the concept of a business case is that we are talking about it from the sales perspective, but it's actually a buy-side tool. Mm-hmm. It's the only sales tool that's actually the buyer tool. And that's unique because it's something that there is an absolute shared alignment or an aligned interest on making sure that business case is as accurate, as ironclad as possible. And so it should never be done in isolation. It needs to be done in collaboration. Because at the end of the day, if it's a good business case, then you've given your champion the very tool that they're going to use to make the decision.
Yes, and this is another error that we make, or a misunderstanding. I guess you're in the business, you probably hear the word ROI used interchangeably with a business case, right? ROI is the magic word, that's the silver bullet, it does it. So frequently I get requests, we've done the demos, we've done the POCs, we're given a proposal, give me an ROI. Can I validate it with the customer? I can generate something, but is it going to resonate? No, you can't. We already talked to the customer. We had numerous discovery calls. We had numerous calls. We're not going to bother them, so we need an ROI. It's the silver bullet. So that's now somebody can look at that ROI, whether it resonates with them or not. That's a different story, right? If you don't validate that business case once, twice, or three times with different stakeholders, I don't believe that it will go very far.
It's a
So
believability, right? Yeah.
value management, but it's not really value management, right?
The other thing that we find, and I'd love your perspective on it, is that oftentimes we don't realize or we forget that the champion that we're speaking with, it may be the very first time they're buying this category. So it's not like they're experts in knowing how to buy or what information to share with you to help you better sell to them. And so it needs to be a bit of a dance, a bit of a partnership, and trust needs to be established, right? I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I mentioned about, my first question, one of my first questions in the first meeting, how do you evaluate technology, right? And this is where their experience in the matter comes
I
up.
love
And
that
this
question.
What gives you the drive to build a closer relationship and a closer partnership with that person. And then as you build the business case, you work with them, you go through the discoveries, the validations, and then once you have the final business case, as you mentioned, ironclad, verified, now who's going to deliver it to the stakeholders? It's our champion. So you have to enable them on it. And I typically say, look, I can do it for you. Or if you can have me on the call, fly on the wall, I won't say anything. But if you need me, I will be there to answer questions rather than,
How often is that the case?
Oh, that happens quite often.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens quite often. That I ask the question now whether I get it or not. A couple of times I got the invite to be on the executive call. A couple of times I just had to enable and re-enable and play devil's advocate, ask questions, hammer the business case from my perspective. Why is this? And see how the champion responds to me, right? And then we can tweak it accordingly.
And do you find that a champion tends to perform well?
They perform well with me. How they perform with their leadership, that's it. If I'm on the call, that gives them there is more of an emotional support and gives them more confidence, because if a question is asked, I will know if they can answer it or not, and then I can jump in quietly. So they have that confidence. How they operate in a closed room, would love to see that, actually.
Yeah. I find it fascinating. Look, there's a special relationship we tend to build with our champions. Even at Simbi, we focus a lot on building a lot of champions, internal champions. And sometimes you build a very special relationship. Like there's a real bond. You almost, even post-sale, like a lot of the time we connect very, very, very regularly on how are things going. It's not even a sale. It's more almost a friendship that has been built on this deal, right? And because if it's a genuine desire to make something of value together, then you're going to build a long-term relationship beyond just that one transaction.
Exactly. And this is where, we can talk about delaying the deal a little bit, but then you delay it, but then it makes your sales relationship, your partnership with this company, a long-lasting one. You can sell something every 6 months. You can close a deal every year with that particular customer.
I mean, a company wants to buy from a trusted entity. If you're giving them value and they trust you, there's no point. I mean, there's no reason ever to switch.
Exactly. And I always say, one of the mistakes that we make, and that's across companies, right? We go in first meeting and we talk about how great we are. I always use the analogy of your first meeting with a customer is like your first date with somebody, right? Imagine if you go out on a first date and that person is talking about how great they are all the time.
Really good analogy.
Right? And that will bore you to death, basically, right? Rather than, meeting with someone who will ask you questions and show interest in you, right? That will give you the impression that this person likes me, they're interested in me.
Exactly.
I want to talk to them again, right? I want to introduce them to my family, right? My broader team members or the rest of the organization. Credibility.
For sure. Fadel, look, I've really enjoyed this, but I do have to ask you two relatively uncomfortable questions. First one is, we talked a lot about, you mentioned some great teams that you've worked with in the past. Of all the teams, all the people worked with, who is the best value engineer you've ever worked with?
I can think of two.
Okay, you're allowed to.
I'm allowed to. When I joined Oracle in business analytics, there was one person working on value engineering in a non-formal manner, and I learned a lot from him, and his name was Will Hutchinson.
Will Hutchinson.
Extremely brilliant person, very intelligent, can find the value proposition in anything. Very brilliant in Excel, PowerPoint, and also very strong technically. So I learned a lot from him. I owe him a lot. The other person was with the formal value engineering team at Oracle, and his name is Anand Kadaba. I believe he's with AWS right now, but very methodical. I love the way he handles discovery calls and discovery workshops.
Amazing. Yeah.
And identifying the value. Great guy.
There's a proper art to discovery.
Yes.
People with that genuine curiosity and the ability to guide and lead the witness to a degree. It's a pleasure to see it, to witness it.
It is.
And then on the other side, who's the best sales rep, account exec you've worked with?
I would probably go back to Oracle. There are a couple, but I will mention one, and his name was James Molloy. He was also a big sponsor of value selling. And he and I got along really well. He lived in New York, so that gave me a lot of trips to New York, so that was cool.
Very nice.
But we had a few good successful opportunities because he understood exactly how to qualify the opportunity, how to prioritize it. So he basically paved the road for me to go in and do what I need to do in a very, very efficient manner.
Fadel, thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
Likewise. Thanks, Martin.